Hello. Um, I spent the last hour and a half worrying about what kind of joke I was going to tell at the beginning, because I told one about nervous hiccups last year and it came across pretty well, but I didn't because I'm super nervous. So, no joke. I'm in grade 12, and this is my last year. It's the second art talk that I've done, which is funny because I never thought I would do it again after the last one. It was kind of scarring, but also really wonderful. This is terrifying and a necessary experience, and I just want to give Mr. Very a round of applause. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you. So looking back at my time here, I've begun to realize just how much my perception of art and art making has changed, which I'm very thankful for. I came here thinking that if I couldn't draw an apple perfectly, I would be punished. But my apples still look like deflated balloons or raisins, and I made it here, so I'm okay with that. I think after all this time, I'm finally ready to call myself an artist. It sounds like a bit of a cliche, but something that I think I need to say. I spent a lot of time struggling to make things that I was happy with and that I was proud of and that I thought mattered. And I realized that big ideas happen, but they don't have to happen right away. And I've come to terms with having lots of small ideas instead, which are fun. And I really want to share them with people now, which is the big change. Part of the problem, I think, for a really long time was this very fictional and elusive idea of what I had my art should be. I thought that it had to be the perfect thing, and I was so focused on having this finished product that I stopped making things altogether. It was really quite daunting for a long time. Not to reference you again, I feel like everyone's doing this. He's like this magical genie that comes with advice. I had this conversation and all of a sudden. But really, truly, that does happen. I had just explained a concept that I was interested in pursuing, and you said something like, you have the idea, you don't even need to make the art. And I was like, what? Like, that's not invisible. Invisible art doesn't exist. I may have over-exaggerated, but in retrospect, I think that you're right. I think that Mr. Very is right. I started thinking about the physical versus the intellectual or conceptual part of art making, and until that point, I really hadn't considered one without the other. The conclusion I eventually came to was that the only reason we actually need the physical art piece is because it's easier to understand an idea when we have an object that we can look at. And also there's the art market, which we all need to somehow contribute towards. So sad. So since that conversation, I've been really interested in trying to get my process, so the conceptual or the art thinking part of art making, and the product, which is a finished piece, as close together as possible. That really means just embracing my process as an artist. Sketchbooks are basically my entire process. I archive all my ideas and I write things down that I think are important, even if they aren't important in that moment. Sometimes I can go back and use those ideas, and I notice all these themes in these sketchbooks, which I'll be showing in a second, that make sense in retrospect. So I'm going to be showing a few slides of my sketchbooks. Each slide has 2 books on it, and each page usually encompasses about 1 to 8 images, 1 to 8 pages that are all layered. So I do a lot of cutting, and they end up all kind of being connected. So like I said, some of the patterns that I notice, I don't notice right away, and I can go back years and find images or themes that I'm still using, and that's, I don't know, a really wholesome thing for me. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about is how ignoring the mistakes and questions and thoughts that led me to a finished piece feels really dishonest to me, and I don't really feel comfortable with that. I feel like I'm starting anew after my research instead of building on top of it. So sketchbooks are a way for me to kind of work around that. The thing I love about sketchbooks is that they're the perfect breeding ground for ideas. They take away all of the scary expectations of a finished piece, and they kind of give you some privacy. On the pages of a sketchbook, we can still work towards an idea or a goal, like finishing a page or trying out a new concept, but we don't really have to think about presenting it quite yet. This kind of privacy, like I said, allows us to kind of explore things that we wouldn't be able to explore if we were going straight to a canvas or straight to a sculpture. For a long time, sketchbooks were really the only thing I was doing with my art, and the only medium I was comfortable with because I didn't have to label it as finished. I'm kind of bending these own rules that I've created for myself that were hindering me for so long. I still have a bit of an aversion to calling a piece finished. I often refer to my pieces or my art as parts of a larger whole, or a conceptual thread, or a continual process of creation. Again, in doing this, I hope that process and product will one day become so close together that they are the exact same thing. The more I consider art making, the more I'm starting to believe that the end goal is not always necessary, the end goal being a finished piece. So that's something that's been really confusing to kind of come to terms with, because I was so used to always thinking about an end piece for very long. It's kind of a humble way of thinking, and I'm really having trouble with it, but sometimes it's really rewarding. And I think that it's important because that way we really get to embrace the way we got to a finished product, and maybe even one day we won't need it. That way we're always growing. My sketchbooks seem to be ever-growing markers of success and progress. Even though each book gets filled up, it's still connected conceptually to the one before it and the one to come after. In a cohesive body of work, all ideas have some common ground, even if that link is just the artist they are made by. They are literally products of you. You are what you eat, and you are what you art. Tongue twister. But I think it's true, and I came up with that this morning in the shower. So, ideas do happen unexpectedly. Basically, the conceptual exploration is what's going on here, and art is kind of a vehicle for sharing those ideas with people outside of yourself, outside of your own brain. I think that art really happens when an idea clicks within someone else and it's grown outside of yourself. And I think there is no simple answer to what art is, and I'm still working on that, as you may have noticed. What I want to say is that this kind of community that we've built is based on communication, and art talks are a really good way to share those ideas and to set up an environment where we can just get up here and say something really crazy or something that we think is stupid, but other people understand. I actually don't know when the slideshow ends, but I want to get to this animation that my friend made for you guys. It's of one of my characters that I've used continually in my art. It's a little white character, very ambiguous, doesn't really say much. Sometimes it does say things, and it usually speaks on my part, saying things that I'm afraid to say. Give it a second. Thank you so much for coming, guys.